Good evening all, and welcome. This video has been graciously sponsored by Skillshare. If you didn't know already, this amazing platform offers a variety of online classes on literally everything you can think of, taught by the experts. And with so many of us being stuck at home, like me, it might be time to brush up on existing skills or learn something entirely new. I've decided to take it back to basics and start doing my piano lessons again. I did miss piano, and with the help of Eve Williams, I have been making some serious progress. I do love the piano. So, I highly recommend checking that out if you're interested in playing, but there are also so many other classes you can do, so just go nuts. You can learn anything you want. The first 1,000 people who click the link in my description will get a free trial of Skillshare Premium, which is beyond worth it, so go ahead and make the most of it. But for now, it's time to get comfortable and let the darkness take control. In college, I wait for my roommate to get off work at the new parking garage my campus built. He was a security guard on the night shift. Nothing too crazy most of the time, but one day he finished his shift and I told him I'd meet him outside. He leaves the garage and says, "I don't think you're going to believe me when I tell you this, but I have something to tell someone while it's fresh on my mind." The next part is how I remember him telling me while we sat in the car. He goes, "I was sitting in the office chatting it up with a custodian when he pointed to the security camera screen and told me there's a guy in the stairwell. We both looked at the camera closely, and sure enough there's a guy just standing on the landing in the stairwell in an old-timey suit and bowler hat and everything. The security guard told me he'd start cleaning at the bottom of the stairs, and if he saw the gentleman he'd tell him to leave. I told him I'd come up to the landing and do the same. I didn't see him on my way to the landing, so I made my way to the stairs while calling out that the garage was closed for the night in case he was hiding. While walking through the stairwell, I startled the custodian because he was expecting to see Mr. Suit as well, but no one left the stairwell at the bottom. I told him I had to check out the rest of the grounds and that maybe he slipped out another way, even though there was no real way either of us could have missed him. I'm approaching the ramp of the next to last landing on the top of the garage, and I see an older woman in an old-timey dress and umbrella. She's going up the ramp in the distance, and I yell at her that she shouldn't be up here and swiftly pick up the pace before I lose sight of her going to the top level. As soon as I arrive to the ramp she was ascending, I don't see her. I got to the top of the ramp and see a kid skateboarding on the last level of the garage. I tell him the garage is closed and he shouldn't be up here, but at the same time wondering where the woman went. The skateboarder apologized and said he'd walk down with me if that would be okay. We got to the bottom and I say, "Hey man, you see anything weird at this garage tonight?" The skateboarder looked at me with the most confusing stare and said, "Well, there was this older woman standing at the edge of the garage and I didn't see her come up the ramp. I screamed at her to tell her she should be careful and not get too close to the edge. I went to pick up my board and when I looked she was gone. I ran to the edge to see if she jumped, but nothing. She was gone. She was wearing this old-looking dress and an umbrella. I didn't want to tell the kid I saw the exact same woman because I was too freaked out. I suggested that it was probably a costume party and some people were messing around. I couldn't explain the disappearances though. He said he thought the same thing, but he remembers his boss telling him that years ago 20s era people would dress up in their Sunday duds and walk through the park in town. The park was right where this parking garage was. I'm a security guard and work graveyard shift for a federal contractor in an office building in the Washington, D.C. area, and have been at this site for about 2 months. The building is very secure. You need to get a key card in order to get in, as well as to move around the building. Well, today when I show up to work, The guard I'm relieving tells me that he got a prank call / death threat over the phone. I told him to shut up and go home, that he was serious and had a report written up and everything. So the other guard tells me that he got a call around 7:20 from someone saying they were in the building in a weird scream voice. He just hung up on them, but they called back a few minutes later and do the same thing, saying, "Come find me, I'm on the 7th floor," and that they would cut him and do all kinds of stuff in that same weird voice. Well, we have to do our hourly patrols between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. But he didn't do any of his because he was too freaked out, and I don't blame him. So I asked him if he didn't mind staying a little longer to do the patrol with me. We do the whole thing pretty thoroughly and don't see anything, so he goes home. It's now 11:15 p.m. I'm sitting at the desk after completing my second patrol, and am a little freaked out myself. That's when I get a phone call. Immediately I start freaking out because it's from a restricted number, and the only people that really dial this number are our main office and people from the company we contract for. I pick up the phone and this strange sort of wheezing voice starts saying, "What floor are you on?" My hands are shaking and I'm basically freezing and don't move or say anything. After asking me the same question several more times, they hang up and I call my supervisor, the building security manager, and our dispatch. The weirdest part is that the person obviously has knowledge of the building because they called right when I finished my patrol asking what floor I was on, and they told the other guard they were on the 7th, i.e. the top floor. Even though I know there's a high chance this is just a prank call from one of our old guards, there's still a slight chance that there's an actual insane person in the building, and I have never been so scared in all my life as to when I heard that voice. That night managed to be one of the longest in my life, but it got weirder. After about 6 hours had passed, nothing had happened, and I started to feel pretty normal, not 100% but not cowering in fear either. I heard a noise at the front door of the lobby. The lobby is shaped like a triangle with the front desk and guard station at the base of the triangle, and the whole right side is a big window with the front doors at the far end of that side. I instantly turn off the speakers to the computer and freeze. I don't move for about a minute and roll my chair over to the camera monitors. The display has 9 camera feeds and switches to the other 9 camera feeds every few seconds, so I'm frantically trying to find the ones that correspond to the front door. Now there are some employees that start showing up between 5 and 6, but they all have key cards, so they come up from the garage through the elevator, and no one has ever tried to do this during the graveyard shift. After what I felt like was an eternity, but was probably only 25 seconds, I find the feed and click on it to maximize, and standing in front of the door facing towards the camera, not into the building, is the figure. He's in a black suit and has a featureless face. I crap you not. My jaw drops and my heart races to the thoughts of Slender Man. I immediately call my supervisor and tell him there's someone outside the building just standing there. He says he's 10 minutes out and he'll pull up in front of the building. After an agonizing 10 minutes of staring at the feed and this guy not going anywhere, my supervisor finally calls me back and tells me to go to the front doors as he'll walk up in case anything gets crazy. Turns out the guy outside was our new guard that no one told us was coming. I didn't know if I wanted to hug the guy or punch him, but I was glad that one of the weirdest nights of my life was finally over. I used to be a supervisor for a janitorial company, and a couple of times a week I had to go to a middle school and clean their hallway floors and gymnasium with a Zamboni-type vehicle that mopped and scrubbed the floors. When I was there, I had the whole school to myself. I used to get finished quickly and go to the library and read while eating my dinner. But one morning after being there, I get a call from the school security. They want me to come in. When I get there, I see a police car. Uh-oh, I think. They asked me a few questions, like did I notice anything out of the ordinary or strange while I was there last night? No, I hadn't. Usually I have headphones in. Security then shows me camera footage of someone breaking into one of the classrooms while I was riding the Zamboni not far away. I was there for another 2 hours. Nothing was stolen. But the worst part was they didn't have footage of the person leaving. They didn't go out the way they came in, and the police had to sweep the entire school. Never did find out what happened with this one. I work night shifts at a nursing home. I drink coffee all night to help keep me up. This one particular night, my co-worker and I were making our usual pot of coffee and noticed we didn't have any of our creamer left. We didn't like using the creamer from the nursing home. It wouldn't dissolve, so it felt like you had paper in your mouth. I told my co-worker I'd go get us some creamer from Walmart, since she couldn't leave. Her being the nurse, she had to stay in case something happened. So I head over to Walmart. I live in a pretty small town, so there's usually no one there at night, except the Walmart employees and probably 2 other customers. So I'm all over the aisle with the creamers and I hear 2 men passing by laughing and goofing off. I thought to myself they're drunk or bored and have nothing else to do and went about my business. I head over to the chip aisle. I'm one of those people that when I go to the shop I just have to get a snack. And again I see the 2 men from earlier and I'm deciding which chips I'd like, when one of them says to me, "Hey, what are you doing out so late?" Mind you, I'm a 20-year-old Mexican girl standing at 5'1" and only weigh 96 pounds. I'm a tiny girl, so I ignore them. I didn't feel like I was being messed with and didn't have any coffee yet, so I was a little grumpy. The guy then yells out, "Can you not hear me? You no hablo English?" Arrogant, I know. I roll my eyes, grab a bag of chips and leave, and then I see them trailing behind me. But I'm on my way to the self-checkout, so I figured they were going to leave the store. Before I go to the self-checkout, I remembered I needed some more wipes for my baby. So I headed over to the other end of the store to the baby aisle and noticed the 2 men still following and giggling. At this point, I'm annoyed and also a little scared, so I rushed to the self-checkout. As I rang up my stuff, I noticed the 2 men went to sit at the benches by the doors, not buying anything, just sitting there looking at me and giggling. I'm very uncomfortable at this point and look around for a Walmart employee to walk me out to my car and make sure they didn't try anything. Luckily, the night manager was passing by just as I was getting ready to leave, and I asked him if he could walk me to my car. I tried to tell him about the men, but when I looked over at the bench, they were gone. We both thought they probably just left. He walked me to my car to make sure I went home safely. I thanked him, locked my door, and called my co-worker to tell her what happened. Thinking it was over, I returned to work. As I'm leaving the parking lot, I see a truck behind me. I didn't think much of it, until I started making turns, and they would go in the same direction. I thinking to myself, great, what if it's the guys from the store? As I reached my job, I called my co-worker and told her to have the door open for me so I can just run in. You need a code to get in, and I usually need a good 2 tries to get it open, and tonight I didn't have time for that. As I arrive to my job, I see my co-worker at the door. I get out of my car and run to the door. As I run, I heard a man yelling from the truck saying, "Bye, mamacita, we'll see you again soon." I turned around and noticed it was the men from the store. They had followed me all the way to my job, which very much creeped me out, and had been looking over my shoulder for the rest of the night. This all happened at 3 a.m. on a Thursday night. I'm not exactly sure why they followed me or what exactly they wanted, or if they were just messing with me because I ignored them. But I'd rather not find out. I work at Subway. You know, sandwiches and stuff. So everyone at our store, aside from my manager and the regional manager, believe the store is haunted. During the day, everything is fine 99% of the time, Whatever is there likes to wait until night shift, specifically 8 till 11 p.m. And the entity also waits until you're separated from your co-workers or alone entirely. The only known time it's been active during the day is one time when the assistant manager was alone in the store and panning up bread on a holiday so it would be unswathed for the next day. He said all was well until towards the end. All of our closed store alerts were going off. The online order noise, drive-through headset beeping, toaster proofing oven, everything. And on top of that, the radio suddenly blasted on full volume. He finished the bread a bit hastily and left. Another night, my co-worker was making her way out of the store when she was grabbing her car keys. Her store clock yeeted itself off the wall and shattered. She cleaned up the glass and left. We still haven't gotten a new clock. The old assistant manager would sometimes stay extra late, off the clock of course, and mooch off the Wi-Fi to do homework. He said he always heard footsteps shuffling and equipment moving around in the back. And my one only experience isn't very special. It was after closing, doors locked, and my co-worker was cleaning the bathrooms and I was finishing the dishes. I was putting away a few on a high shelf and heard someone clear their throat behind me. It scared the crap out of me and I ended up dropping the bowls. I turned around and said, "Screw you," before I could comprehend there was no one really to say it to. The rest of the night I was hella uncomfortable. That is kind of it. I still work there, don't do nights much anymore. Not by choice anyway. La Diablesse, or La Hablesse, is a character from Caribbean folklore. It's a human woman, usually having an attractive body and clothing, but with a hideous face, which she keeps hidden. She has one human foot and one cow hoof. She lures males into the forest so they can get lost and never find their way back, and they end up dying or being eaten by wild animals, or perhaps meet some other gruesome fate. The following story happened in Trinidad in the 80s. My uncle was living in the house I live in presently. It's my grandfather's house that my mother inherited. In those days it was my grandparents and their 8 children. My uncle was one of the older siblings and would work late night shifts and would return home between the hours of 11 p.m. to 1 p.m. Now my street then wasn't as developed as it is now. There was a lot of bush and forested areas with a few houses scattered in between. My house is about 1/4 of a mile in the road and wasn't paved at the time, and more of a track than a road. One night when my uncle returned home from one of his night shifts, he saw in the distance a woman walking down the street. From the look of her clothing, he assumed it was my senile great-grandmother. She had had a few instances where she would wander off and reach far places, so initially my uncle thought it was her. He saw her familiar dress and the white shawl she always had draped over her head, and he could make out pieces of tattoos she had on her arm. Now, he thought it was strange. It was the latest he ever saw her outside, and her house was at least 10 minutes walk from ours. He called out to her a few times, but she didn't turn. She just kept walking. At the time, my uncle decided to follow her and get her back home. As he neared her, he realized something really weird. He kept calling out to her and yet she didn't turn around. When he looked down, he saw that my great-grandmother had a cow hoof where her left foot should have been. He was really close to her now, and when he noticed it, the woman stopped dead in her tracks. My uncle, in sheer terror, turned around and said he'd never run so fast in his entire life. He raced on home, and since that incident, he's always had my grandfather wait up for him until he eventually left that job. This happened to me over 10 years ago. It's been a long time on my mind. I was never a believer in the paranormal. My parents raised me atheist. My mum especially was a very no-nonsense kind of woman. Didn't believe in religion, didn't believe in anything. And that's the way me and my family all viewed the world. That is, of course, until the following events transpired, and my worldview started to change. So as I said earlier, I used to work at a historic hotel. It had been around for over 150 years as far as I knew. The building in some form or another was a hotel. Obviously it had undergone changes, plenty of them, and was a lot bigger than the grounds it originally stood on. As it had been so successful, it actually consumed much of the surrounding buildings. The hotel itself was quite nice, adorned in the Roaring Twenties style. Even the staff were made to wear old-timey clothes, all to add to the authenticity. As contracted night security from a different company, we didn't have to undergo such privileges in regards to our garments. Now, the hotel itself was not that tall, but quite lengthy. It had loads of different rooms and corridors and the like, most of which we could observe via our cameras, and a small section of passages in the basement that were mostly used for housekeeping and laundry and stuff. Anyway, I had been working there a few weeks when I overhear a few of the night watchmen having a chat. I had arrived a few minutes early before I would be relieving them, and I would be doing the graveyard shift. I start getting chatting with them. I hadn't really spoken to them much before and figured it'd be nice to make friends at the job. One of them, Darren, was telling a story about something he'd experienced a number of years ago. He's the kind of guy who, when he got his first job, stuck by it till the bitter end. I think he must have been working here at least 40 years or something, and he looked like he was on the cusp of retirement. I spoke to him for a while, just before my shift started, asking him what it was like to work in the same place for so long. He explained how he enjoyed seeing the hotel change and undergo its renovations, how he'd seen many interesting people come and go, but one thing that stayed consistent were the spooky happenings in the hotel. He said it in a kind of comical way, so I wasn't sure if he was joking or not. He gave a little laugh and said he'd tell me later. I was working with another girl on the night shift. She was quite nice, and at some point in our infinite boredom did we start chatting to each other about the supernatural. She brought it up, and I was curious, more from an interest point of view rather than belief, some of the stuff that had gone on around the hotel. She had been working there a few years now, and it seemed common knowledge that there was something afoot in the hotel that most people couldn't explain away. She said that she wasn't sure how many specters were populating the hotel, but she had heard a few stories, especially one that resonated with her from a disgruntled guest. She had been the person who had actually checked the guest out. She went on to tell the following story. It was a night much like this one, boring, with not much to do. I was just sitting here at the desk, when suddenly I hear the elevators ding, and out comes a woman running, holding her young son in her hand towards the front desk. She slams the key on the counter and says she wants to check out and needs a taxi now. I, in a flurry, ask her what's wrong and why she's choosing to leave at 3 a.m. Does she want to go to the airport? She'd never given me an indication when I checked her in earlier that day. She goes all pink, looks me dead in the eye and says, "Girl, there's a ghost in your hotel, and I'm not staying here a minute longer. Get me a taxi to some other hotel, please. I can't deal with this." She calms down after a few minutes. As you can imagine, a 3 a.m. taxi isn't always going to arrive very quickly. I offer her some tea and biscuits, and after she and her tired son, who by this point had fallen asleep on one of the chairs, accepts, she goes on to tell me what exactly happened. She said she felt like she was being watched since the moment she got into the room. She said the room itself was fine, but there was just an uncomfortable dread and eeriness seeping into her from just being inside. She tried to play it off as long as she could, but she woke up in the middle of the night to pee. Just as she was getting up to go, did she see something from the corner of her eye, but in her groggy state, just assumed it was nothing. She went into the bathroom and, as an important detail, said she didn't close the door and let the light trickle into the room. As the bathroom is in a sort of mini passageway before you enter the room itself, there wasn't that much light pollution that could have awoken her son, she explained, and she was scared that by closing the door and opening it again, there was more chance of that waking up her son than the light itself. I'm not sure why she added that, but she did. She then went on to say that just as she was getting up and about to wash her hands, did she see the shadow, what she assumed she saw a moment ago, now by the rim of the light. Trying to not feed too much into it, did she turn? She said at that point the shadow moved. It made her jump because it darted straight towards her. She wasn't sure if it disappeared before it reached her or if it went right through her, but she turned around and there was no shadow in the room. At this point she was wide awake, freaked the hell out, got her son, threw their stuff in the suitcase, put on some jeans and a jumper, and jumped straight out. I checked the room after they were gone and couldn't find any remnants of anything spooky. That was just one story she shared with me that night. Another one that I found particularly interesting was one that was later corroborated by Darren, although Darren's was far more complete, so I'll tell his version, as it happened to a guy he worked with who was long since retired. This guy was working night security. An important detail is that this hotel has a roof. No one really uses it. It's got gravel on there, and I think some of the night guards when patrolling go up there just to have a smoke. So this guard goes upstairs midway through his rounds and has a smoke, just staring into the sea of lights in the city. That's when he hears a crunching from behind him. Assuming it's one of his colleagues, he doesn't even turn around, but instinctively offers them a smoke, waiting for the crunching to get closer and for them to reach him just as he's looking out. He ponders as all the noises stopped. So he asks again, but still doesn't turn around. "So you gonna come for the smoke?" A voice from behind goes, "Yeah," in one of the deepest voices possible. For a moment he just stands there, pondering who this voice is. As far as he's aware, no one with this voice is even working here tonight, not that he can recognize whose it is. In his curiosity and confusion, he turns around, as he hears a crunch midway on the roof. He looks but sees no one, but the sound of the crunching of gravel is ever approaching towards his location. He's quite close to the edge at this point. He's maybe a few feet just looking out onto a sheer drop. As the gravel approaches, he just about craps his pants because there's no one around, that he can see anyway, and boots it to the door. He closes the door behind him, runs all the way down the stairs, and makes it to the front desk. The guy openly admitted to wetting himself on the way down. He was absolutely terrified. He called in sick the following week and reluctantly came back to work, but apparently never went up to smoke again on the roof of the hotel. The last story is one of my own. There were many other small things that happened. Guests that saw things in the middle of the night, much like the First Lady. Workers who saw apparitions in hallways. People in old-timey clothes who would walk into the elevator, and when they'd reach the elevator themselves, they'd be gone. But the one that happened to me, albeit not as scary as the others, fully convinced me that there might be something more to the paranormal than my family want me to think. I had been at work for about 2 hours. It must have been around midnight, and I was just sorting out some paperwork while absent-mindedly texting a friend. I had to print off some documents for personal reasons, and I'm sure that the company wouldn't mind a few pages and a dot of ink. Just as they were coming out of the printer, it jams. I swear under my breath, look into the printer and try tugging on the page, but it rips. Annoyed, I do the thing where you have to flip the printer open to retrieve the damaged page. It was a careful, tricky business, because my tug had ripped the page in several different places, and now I was trying to fish little bits of paper out from all the printer cogs that were so annoying. I don't know if it was just my printers, but I had always hated them. They were always slow, they never worked, and the work one, which was the best one I'd ever worked with, was now failing on me, which was super irritating. Just as the piece of paper is coming out after the second print, do I hear a voice behind me. "Printer trouble, huh?" "Yeah," I say absent-mindedly, just as the page is coming out. In truth, at that moment I felt a little bit guilty, because what I was printing was for personal reasons, and I hadn't been at the job long enough yet to know if people cared if you printed off a piece of paper for yourself, if it would be a big deal or not. So, trying to kind of hide it, making out it was work-related, I was just gonna be like, "Yeah, you know, logs and stuff," when I turn around to answer the phantom voice. But there's no one there. I look down the corridor to where front desk is, and I see that there's a girl at reception, a different one than the one I mentioned earlier. I look around, try and ignore it, put my papers in my bag, and casually walk over to the girl at reception. I ask her if she'd seen someone go into the back office, and she says no. Then I ask her who's working here tonight. She looks in the small red book in front of her and says that it was only me and her. I leave it there. I don't say anything else and go about and do my work, but that severely freaked me out. There's no way I imagined that voice, and after hearing everything that people have said and experiencing something that I truly couldn't explain for myself, am I convinced then there might be more to the paranormal than I first thought. I'm 24. I live in Michigan, and I've been working at a small airport for the past 4 years. Our hangars have been around since the 60s or 70s. I've worked third shift on and off the entire time. During that time, me and some of my co-workers have all witnessed some weird stuff, but it seems like I have experienced the most of it, and I'm not sure why. Note that there are 3 people that work third shift, 2 line guys and 1 dispatcher. We constantly hear weird noises, closing doors, footsteps, the occasional voices, and we look around and we never find anything. One night my co-worker went home early because his pregnant wife needed him, and I was sitting in a chair at around 4 AM taking a break watching a YouTube video. As I'm sitting there, what sounded like something extremely heavy fell and made a loud bang. It was loud enough that the dispatcher heard it from the other side of the building. My immediate thought was a jack gave out and plane fell, but nothing was knocked over or out of place. I freaked the dispatcher out so much he called the police to secure the hangar in case someone got inside. Another night, my co-worker who no longer works here, called Barry, was in the bathroom with me when I came out and saw him go up the stairs into the office section of the hangar. So I followed him up, and when I got to the top of the stairs, I asked him what he was doing. He turned around and had a look of fear on his face. He told me he saw me go up the stairs and was following me to scare me. He said whoever it was in the same outfit, same hairstyle, and had the same hat. Everything was the same, from the worn Carrot coat to the Detroit Lions beanie with a stain on it and glasses. We searched the place high and low and found nothing. The only way out was past us or through the dispatch room. No one went through either. This next occurrence happened in January, right after a fresh snow on a calm night. The door to the hangar was just shaking like someone was trying to get in. We thought it wasn't latched properly, so we made sure it was secure. As we walked away, it started shaking again, but more intense. Once we got close to the door, it stopped, checking the door once again. When we got to the other side of the hangar, it happened again. We thought someone had to be messing with us, so we looked outside and found no footprints and no wheel markings of any kind. The snow wasn't all the way up to the building, so we thought someone maybe walked on that section, but it was only on one section. So if it was someone, we'd seen them walking through the snow in another section. We checked the whole perimeter of the building and through the parking lot, but found nothing. These next few things I've seen personally, and no one else has seen anything similar. We have been dead since the whole COVID-19 shutdown. We shut off half the lights in the hangar now, and as I sit down on my phone, I can always see dark shapes in my peripheral. The weirdest is I can see a dark mass creep out from under the toolbox. It's the size of a softball, but it was extremely dark. It moves slowly, creeping towards me, and if anyone makes a movement or I look back at it, it shoots back underneath. Another thing is I walked past our break room and saw someone sitting in a chair with their boots up on the picnic table bench. I could make out warm brown boots and blue jeans, but it was only the bottom half. I turned the light on, and there was nothing. After seeing those two things, I experienced sleep paralysis for the first time ever. I woke up and just saw a dark black figure standing in my doorway. It was clear because it happened around 3 in the afternoon. This last thing happened 2 days ago. Me and my co-worker Terry were sitting down, and a 5-foot piece of 1/4-inch wall trim was knocked off a shelf and landed 10 feet away from it. We know where it fell because we cleaned up and Terry put it on the shelf, and it wasn't hanging off or anything. It was a solid 6 inches off the ledge. I honestly don't know what to think of this stuff, and there has to be a reasonable explanation for all of this. I just feel like I need to get all this off my chest, but felt like people would think I'm crazy or lying. But I know this is real. Me and my friend Chad and my boyfriend were hanging out at his job. He's a security guard, so we were all sitting in the booth. It's like a 10 by 10, so it's fairly small, but no one else was around. They were all inside the warehouse building because the booth is so small. It's easy to know where sounds are coming from, and there are so many options. I started hearing flute music, kind of like Elven, or like you'd hear in Lord of the Rings in the Shire. I thought it was just my friend or my boyfriend's phone games as they were playing on their phone, but mine was dead, so I knew it wasn't playing. I also thought it could have been the small radio, but the direction of the waves were coming from the left, not the right, where the radio was. I kept hearing it off and on, and then I said to everyone, "What's the music?" And then my friend said he heard it too. I had my boyfriend turn up his sound, and it wasn't his game. My friend was playing Clash of Clans, so it wasn't his either. As we sat to listen, as soon as we really stopped paying attention to it or got distracted, I thought I could hear it again, and he did too. But my boyfriend claims he couldn't hear a thing. So me and my friend start checking that the computer isn't playing. The speakers aren't on. We check the small radio and make sure the phone volumes are all the way down. We didn't hear it after maybe catching small tidbits floating back in, and not being able to focus due to being distracted when we thought we heard it. It seemed to float in and out of sound, instead of abruptly stopping and starting, so it was hard to notice it, since it creeped in slowly, if that makes sense. I just think it's weird because it was a nice day and the music was very pleasant. I felt like I was in the middle of a forest, like a Disney character. Then I started thinking about it and realized, wait, Nothing is playing that music. After I thought that, the music kept going, but once I brought it up, it sort of faded. I think it's strange that my friend and I could hear it, yet my boyfriend couldn't. Almost like gentle background noise. It was Saturday, and everyone's out for the weekend except me. I work at a call center, and we don't get a lot of calls on weekends. One person is enough to cover an entire night shift. I'm from the Philippines and our clients are in the US. There's a 12-hour difference in the time zone, hence why we work at night. I was alone on the second floor of the building, with just the janitor and the guard on the first. I was at my cubicle waiting and answering calls. At around 2 a.m. I got a call from a client, just the usual conversation of queries and concerns. As we were wrapping up the call, the client asked me, "Are you home?" I answered, "No, I'm in the office. Why do you ask?" He said, "Because I can hear a lot of babies crying." I ended the call without saying goodbye and ran to the first floor shaking. The janitor asked what was wrong. I told him what happened. The janitor told me, "You must be new. There are 2 children and 1 mother haunting this place. They don't harm anyone, but they do play tricks sometimes." That was that. I never did night shift alone since then, and I left the company 2 months later. This is the same building where my ex-colleague experienced keyboards typing on their own, and where chairs make random movements and noises. Hey guys, it's Mort here and thank you so much for listening. Well, it's official. I'm stressed. There's no other way to put it really. Got back from the doctor earlier today, a specialist in fact. I think they're ear and throat specialists. And basically the whole back of my throat is burnt. Why is it burnt? Well, apparently I've got some, I don't know how to say it. Was it like an invisible reflux? It's basically where my stomach acid goes up my throat while I sleep, and that burns the back of my throat. For a while, I don't know if I've mentioned this in a video previously or maybe perhaps in a secret message section, I've been feeling like there's something in my throat right underneath my Adam's apple. You know, like that hole, like where people get stomas, you know, like there, like just at the base of your throat. I feel like there's something back there. So apparently that's a muscle contraction because of the burning, because of the damage done to my throat, because of this. And what else? Well, yeah, I think it's just because of that. That's why I have this sensation. And now my muscles are tense and contracting there. So that's really not fun. Coupled with my other condition. I asked him what caused it, and he said that it can just happen, but that stress has certainly aggravated the condition. And I have been feeling quite stressed lately. I don't really know what to do, guys. I do like posting daily. I do like making you guys happy. But perhaps it's slowly destroying me. Maybe that's an exaggeration. But it is, doing me harm. I don't know if I'm overworking. Perhaps it's not normal to work every single day until you feel burnt out and then take a day break and then just carry on. Maybe that really isn't the best way to go about doing things. I don't know. Maybe I should dedicate like 3 days a week to recording my weekly content and then 2 days to editing and then have the weekend off. I really need to manage my time better, so I guess it is my fault really that this has happened. But I like uploading every day, and I don't like missing days. I don't know. It's not good for my health, apparently. I don't really know. I don't know, guys. It's a tough call. I don't really know what to do. I know all of you will probably say, health is important, and it is. But I feel bad, because I don't want to be like, right, I'm going to upload a lot less, because I know you guys rely on me to fall asleep. But it's not like I've got 1,000 other videos to listen to anyway. Nonetheless, it's a difficult conversation I need to have with myself And it'd be great if I could like physically talk to you guys about it, but because the thing is like not everyone comments, so I don't really know what a lot of you think. And I've got my core subscribers, and I've got like transient people who come in, listen for a bit, and then they go away. And that's fine. But I just don't know what to do. Obviously this is my job, and I don't want to do anything that can negatively impact my job. So yeah, that's kind of a bummer. It's I'm repeating myself now. It's just a tough call, guys. I'm a bit lost as what to do. I think I'm also going to seek professional help to manage my thoughts and stuff, like a psychologist, psychiatrist, whichever one you just go to have a chat and see what they say, and see what my wife and family say, I suppose. I don't know. Maybe I just need to like chill. I don't know. You've heard enough of this now. I'm really sorry for rambling at all of you. Thank you so much for watching, especially if you listen to me ramble for 5 minutes. Stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.